Assalamualaikum and good evening, everyone. So we are from Group 2, consisting of Kishaalini, Najla, Aliyah, Nanthini, Norfadziana, Amran, and me, Binti Mustafa. So the first article is the hope and optimism as an opportunity to improve the positive mental health demand. Uh, so for the introduction, since the COVID-19 pandemic, it has taken a toll of daily life, including mental well-being. Finding meaning and building positive processes and capacities will help strengthen future mental health. Recently, there has been increased interest in assessing the attributes, structure, and individual vulnerability of well-being and identifying its psychological promoters. This research has begun to clarify the determinants of positive mental health. Positive expectations for the future, commonly conceptualized as hope and optimism in the literature, can act as potential mechanism toward achieving positive mental health. So the conceptualization of dispositional hope and dispositional optimism share several elements, which is first, personality traits, cognitive constructs, reference to general expectancies, relation to significant personal goals, future orientation, and also acting as determinants of behavior. Hope and optimism, although often used interchangeably in clinical discourse, are in fact distinct constructs corresponding to distinct mechanisms by which expectations shape human behavior and produce positive outcomes. This article is actually aiming to examine some differences between optimism and hope and integrate these constructs in the context of positive mental health, and also to point out some interventions that promote hope and optimism. So moving on to the next part, which is the benefits of optimism and hope for positive mental health. So whether optimism and hope can affect physical and mental health has been discussed among academics around the world. There is empirical evidence supporting the notion that both attitudes contribute to positive outcomes. In this context, optimism is defined as a cognitive variable reflecting one's favorable view about their future. Optimists generally have more positive than negative expectations, and they tend to report less distress in daily life, even in the face of challenges. What is expected to happen in the future can affect how people experience situations in their daily life, their health, and how they deal with emotions and stress. Optimists are more focus and generalize expectations rather than how or why the goal is achieved. Studies also has found that optimism is related to fewer symptoms of depression, higher levels of well-being, lower attrition rates, and stronger perceptions of social support. And as for hope, as a as a state of positive motivation based on the three components, which first is objective, which is the goals to be achieved, the pathways, planning to achieve these goals, and the agency, which is motivation directed to this objective. So the catalyst for positive change, hope also promotes overall mental health and may help heal specific conditions, including severe mental illness, suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety, and trauma-related disorders. Research also shows that hope has strong associations with several psychosocial process and outcomes, including positive effect, emotional adjustment, and illness-related coping, greater life satisfaction, enhanced perceptions that life is meaningful, a higher sense of purpose in life, quality of life, and social support. So that's all from me. I will pass to Najla.
Uh, Thank you, Ifa, for the presentation just now. So moving on to the next point is the strategy that promote hope and optimism in psychiatric mental health nursing. Mental health, hope and optimism are intimately related and can be reinforced with simple daily action that boost mental strength. Some of the strategy that can be done by the nurse to help their patient is emphasis on strength. Reaching out to friend and loved one may inspire optimism and positive emotion, since connecting with people is one of our strength. For the second strategy is reframe negative thought. Focusing on what's horrible and seeing it positively might instantly make someone feel better when they are feeling nervous or frantic. Uh, Practice hopeful thinking is the third strategy. For example, when depressed people think positively, their symptom of unhappiness and depression are less severe, and their sense of purpose in life, happiness, and wellness are all improved. Next is increasing self-esteem and self-awareness. For example, when someone is feeling positive and optimistic, they frequently see themselves as earning from someone else's kindness, which make them feel value and raise individual sense of self-worth. Other than that, hang out with hopeful and optimistic people. We must pick our social surrounding and interaction, since both positive and bad emotion are infectious according to the evidence. The next strategy is practice gratitude by journaling or complimenting ourselves that can create purity and genuine happiness. Apart from that, is reinforcing positive effect by a variety of methods, such as seeing a comedy film or getting a gift to promote thriving and focus mental well-being. For the last strategy is training resilience and finding a sense of purpose. This is because people that are resilient typically keep a more upbeat attitude and handle stress better by taking part in communal activities, developing individuals' faith, or engaging in worthwhile pursuit. In conclusion, optimism and hope are significant adaptive factor that support psychological adjustment, well-being, and quality of our life in both the general population and in particular groups, such as those who have mental health disorder. Thank you. So for the article 2, I will pass to the next presenter.
Thank you to Najla. So next, I will present about the article 2, the neural basis of optimism and pessimism. Next, for the optimism and pessimism, is expecting a positive or negative future. So as a person in optimistic, they will a person can be optimistic in regard to be a specific area of life. For example, is expecting his or her marriage or relationship to succeed, but pessimistic regarding other aspects such as expecting financial difficulties ahead. An optimistic person will see good things everywhere, while the pessimistic will observe mainly the negative aspect of everything around. So, the main thing of this article is optimistic and pessimism as experiential phenomena. So, they are expressed briefly as a mood, a temporary state of mind, or as a continual attitude. Next, for the connective mechanism of optimism and pessimism. So, optimism and pessimism are associated with distinct perceptual and cognitive modes. The principal difference, which are A, selective attention and information processing, B, a belief, and C, the general schema on holds for interpreting personal events. Next, for selective information processing, this is to use the common expression. The optimistic will focus his attention on the glass half full, while the optimistic will select the positive or reinforcing cues from the environment. Compared to pessimism, person they will tend to do the exact opposite. For example, they will view the negative cues while tending to forget the positive aspect of a situation. So the two cerebral hemispheres are differentially attuned and receptive to environmental cues. The LH is more attuned to positive stimuli. In contrast, the RH is more attuned to negative information. The same lateralization of processing positive and negative information applies to auditory stimuli. The LH is associated not only with a temporary optimistic mental state, but it also with optimism as a state personality characteristic. Next, for the locus of control, it is a general belief about one's ability and inability to control important aspect of life. Is a crucial element that determines a person's attitude. So those who believe that events in their life are controlled by outside force, for example, the external locus of control, they will see themselves as relatively passive agents. The success and achievement occur in their view mainly due to luck, chance, and affiliation with powerful people or institution. And the probability of a person succeed by his own actions and effort is very low. This fatalistic view is at the core of pessimism. While for the optimistic view, they will see themselves as active agents and they will feel that they are the master of their destiny. For example, the internal locus of control, and they will trust their ability to influence their environment as well as social relationships. Next, for the attribution style, another difference between the optimistic and the pessimistic is their way of interpreting important events in their life. The attribution of unsuccessful outcomes to internal, stable, and global factor. For example, I am incompetent and always fail in everything that I do. So this thing is lead to pessimistic view, and since this is the factors beyond one's control. So for the successful result, the reverse is true. Ascribing one's success to internal, stable, and global factors. For example, I am capable of succeeding in everything that I choose to do. So this enhances one's good feeling and increase his or her confidence about future achievements. So this is one of the optimism person point of view. So next, for the optimism bias, this unrealistic optimism is enabled by selective information processing. It will demonstrate in experience where participants estimate their probabilities of experiencing a range of positive and negative events. For example, having a happy marriage, winning the lottery, or suffering from cancer, such as Alzheimer's disease. So from the analysis of participant brain's activity during this assignment, it revealed that the right inferior frontal gyrus was activated when the new information called for pessimistic adjustment, but for optimistic adjustment, the right inferior frontal gyrus was not activated. And lastly, for the optimistic and pessimistic attitudes, it also can be induced by manipulate the brain's physiological activity in a way that selectively enhance activity in one hemisphere. So next, I will pass to next presenter.
Thank you, Faz. I will continue present about hypochondriasis. Hypochondriasis is a mental disorder with excessive worry of having a serious illness that has been not been diagnosed. In a way, hypochondriasis can be viewed as the opposite of the optimist bias. For example, pessimist bias in regard to the health issue. A typical hypochondriasis psychiatrists will interpret minor physical symptoms as sign of a serious disease, will undertake many unnecessary medical checks, and will express doubt and disbelief at a physician or doctor, assume that he or she is perfectly okay. Since the left side of the body is innervated by the RH, it im- implies a strong sorry a strong link between hypochondriasis, for example, pessimistic view about one health and the RH. Next is um, anoxonosia. Some patients with motor paralyzed after stroke lack awareness of their defensive or simply deny themselves. A neurological condition is called anosonosia. A typical patient with anosonosia for hemiplegia cannot move their paralyzed limb but still insists that nothing is wrong. Anosonosia include a significant um, motor, motivational element, and therefore it can be viewed as delusion. Delusion. For example, patient create a self-wishing wishful representative of relative. Um, Furthermore, some stroke patients, even those who are not officially diagnosed with the disease, underestimate their limitation, and despite this, the nurse warning, they try to stand up and walk without uh, assistance, which often end up in a falling accident. Study comparing patients with a RH stroke to those with a LH stroke found that the former group overestimate their ability to perform daily activity, significant more than the latter group. This is yet another demonstration of the LH um, of the LH meditation of an over-optimist and and, and unrealistic assessment of one physical ability compared to the RH involvement in medicine for more realistic and less exaggerated evaluation of themselves. Next, it's self-esteem. Self-esteem is a person evaluation and appraisal of him or herself. It is one of the factors leading to a sense of happiness and general success in life. Self-esteem is a close link with one basic outlook on life and the motivation to deal with challenge. Those with high self-esteem feel confident, capable, worth it, and tend to be optimists, whereas people with a low self-esteem are typically more critical to themselves, somewhat insecure, and often feel incapable with dealing with life challenges, and are generally pessimists. EEG study revealed that a greater physiological activity in the frontal part of the LH is associated with a high self-esteem, a general sense of happiness and well-being, as well as a better resilience and recovery from the abused childhood. Next is a body image. A person's body image is an important factor of his or her self-esteem. According to the RH, involvement in negative thinking and low self-esteem is reflected also in body image perception. Perception. Healthy women view self-distorted feature of themselves and have to decide for each image whether it was better or thinner than their real body. The result indicate that when the picture was present in the left visual field, uh, which is to the RH, they were judged as fatter. In a rare psychiatric disorder called body integrity identity disorder (BIID). Able-bodied individual feel that their body form is inappropriate and desire an amputation of their own limb, which they are described as not belonging to them.
Jangan senyum lah, Bas.
This finding implying that this satisfaction with one body shape is associated with the neurophysiological process in RH. Next, I will pass to Nanthini.
Thank you, Afifah. As per persistence, when facing with obstacles on way towards their desired goals, optimist people tend to be more determined and persistent in his or her efforts to achieve their goals. Meanwhile, pessimist people tend to give up quite fast when facing with obstacles. In this case, LH stimulated group show a greater persistence in trying to solve a puzzle. LH also made more attempts to solve problems as compared to RH stimulated group. Next. Next is risk taking. Risk taking requires courage and readiness to take some risk, getting out of one's comfort zone, and able to step into the unknown that have elements of risk. In risk taking, optimists are the one who take more reasonable risks, while pessimists associated with a reduced tolerance of risk. In this case, LH associated with risk taking, while higher preference for risk, and RH associated with risk avoidance. Next. Depression. Depression is characterized by overly pessimistic thoughts, a negative thinking style, and a tendency to focus and ruminate what is wrong and magnify it while ignoring the good thing in one's life. Depression associated with a hyperactive RH and a hypoactive LH. In this case, LH minimizing the inter-hemisphere imbalance in depression. Next. The following one is mania. Mania refers to the elevated mood, euphoria, and unjustified optimism. People with mania tend to be pessimistic and depressed. That often leads to euphoria and manic states. LH strokes tend to be pessimistic and depressed, while RH stroke often leads to euphoria and manic states. Next, let me pass it to Kishaalini to discuss further.
Thank you, Nanthini. Now I will share about the neural states among the individual who attempt suicide or a victim of suicide. Suicide attempts shows the extreme state of pessimistic and hopelessness. The result of EEG test, which is a test that measure electrical activity in the brain, shows that the girl who attempted suicide have great physiological activity in right hemisphere of their brain compared to a healthy girl. Individuals who are really intended to die have a higher RH activation because of a complete hopelessness they feel compared to those who attempt to suicide with no intention to die because they have still a little hope in them to live. Other than that, the post-mortem analysis shows that suicide victims have greater density of one economo neurons, neurons that allow rapid communication across the brain in the right anterior cingulate cortex. Because in humans, intense emotion activates the ACC. For example, intense anger, or which is in this case the hopelessness. So the overall result shows that pessimistic mood strongly affect the RH in physiological level and also in anatomical level. Next. The possible biological mechanism. The topic of discussion before shows that the optimistic and the pessimistic thoughts, attitudes, and moods are related to the lateralization of the brain function, where the optimism linked to the physiological activity in LH and pessimism linked to the activity in RH. This leads to the broader question that what is the underlying biological mechanism that explains the difference between two hemispheres that sustain optimism and pessimism individually, which is still researched widely. Next. Pessimistic thoughts are staying with fear and stress. Talks about how RH associated with pessimistic tendencies. The RH, the right hemisphere, involved with regulating more cautious and fearful mental state, which is the major factor that links RH and the pessimistic thought patterns. Similarly, the RH also play a significant role in regulating the stress and anxiety hormones. The RH will function to deal with the dangerous situation using nervous system, particularly the sympathetic nervous system (SNS) processes, as the SNS function to prepare the body to respond to potential threats or danger by regulating our automatic motor system. So RH will function as the alarm system when identify any potential threats and prepare the body to deal with the situation with the help of SNS, which is why biologically the RH is more focused on what might go wrong rather than what is good, which is very similar to the pessimistic thought, which largely contains of worries and preoccupation with negative instead of the positive outcome. So this explains how RH are associated with the pessimistic tendencies. So in simple word, pessimism involves thinking style that anticipate the uncertain future with the worry and negative outcome, which contains the elements of fear, anxiety, and stress. So the pessimism will activate the RH physiological activity in the brain with the help of SNS in regulating the emotion. So for me, I will pass the presentation to Afifah. Thank you.
Thank you, Kishaalini. So I will talk about the interlink of optimism with proactive attitude. Next slide. Sorry. So our interaction with the environment is controlled by two neural systems, which is the behavioral activation system (BAS) and the behavioral inhibition system (BIS). The BAS regulates appetite, positive incentive motivation, and is manifested in approach behaviors towards potentially rewarding stimuli. The BIS, on the other hand, is sensitive to aversive cues and regulates avoidance withdrawal behaviors from potentially harmful or pain-inducing stimuli. This functional organization of the two cerebral hemispheres mean that the right and left hemisphere subserve different modes of dealing with the environment. The left hemisphere mediates an active mode of achieving one's goal, which is reflected in the motor or behavioral, emotional, and cognitive domains. For example, being physically active and also in a proactive state of mind, taking the initiative to improve one's condition. The right hemisphere, on the other hand, mediates a cautious mode which balances the drive for actions and promotes a relatively passive state of mind. Optimism is associated with taking an active approach for both maximizing one's well-being and minimizing the stresses. Furthermore, having confidence about eventual success prompts the optimist to continue trying even when the going gets tough. And moving on to the next part, the dexterity breeds confidence. So mental processes involve operations of schemas, including structured networks of symbols, knowledge, and feelings linked by conceptual metaphors. And that schemas are intrinsically shaped by the sensory feedback received through motor and muscular activation. It seems plausible that the laterality in handedness may also have its contribution to the lateralization of optimism and pessimism. Majority of the population is more dexterous in the right hand. For example, they perform motor skills better with their right hand than with their left hand for most people. So during development, these schemas evolve further so that experiences of success and failure, confidence and insecurity, as well as more elaborated concepts such as self-esteem, for example, feeling pride or humility, body image, acceptance or criticism of oneself, a general worldview like optimism or pessimism, and related behaviors, persistence in spite of difficulty or surrender to hardship, taking risks to achieve a desired goal or avoiding risk, and furthermore, are all being assimilated and integrated into these fundamental schemas respectively. So that's all from me. So I will pass the presentation to Najla Aliyah.
Yeah. Thank you, Ifa. So I will continue to the next point is perfectionism. Uh, Perfectionism is an acceptance of the need for satisfying in some areas of life, which ultimately leads to even more disappointment with individual imperfect existential condition and personal flaws. Individual perception of his or her own ineptitude, personal weakness, and inferiority is reinforced by repeated failure. This downward spiral worsen negative thought patterns and may result in feeling of helplessness, self-blame, and finally despair. It is not a mere accident from a neurobiological standpoint that the RH uh, mediates negative connective pattern such as low self-esteem, pessimism, despair, and others. Uh, RH also receive a somewhat worse motor feedback, and next is more sensitive to individual body image and other fault generally. Next slide. So in conclusion, both pessimism and optimism are essential to our survival and well-being. The RH acts as the brain's alarm system and is comparatively more engaged in modulating stress and terror. The RH is physiological setup to recognize danger and get the body ready to cope with threats, while the LH is physically built to keep the body in a calm condition that promotes the growth and flourishing of positive idea. The LH also play a more active part in addressing the environment. And that's all from us. Thank you everyone.